Lecture 5. The theme is homonyms, synonyms, and antonyms. The plan of the lecture: homonyms, classification of homonyms, synonyms, the dominant synonym, classification of synonyms, antonyms. Homonyms are words different in meaning but identical in sound or spelling, or both in sound and spelling. For example, the word bank. It means a shore and an institution for receiving, lending, exchanging money. And the word ball. It means a sphere, any spherical body, and a large dancing party. The term homonym is derived from Greek homos, similar, and onoma, name, and thus expresses the sameness of name combined with a difference in meaning. Homonyms can appear in the language not only as a result of the split of polysemy, but also as a result of leveling of grammar inflections, when different parts of speech become identical in their outer aspect. Homonyms can also appear in the language accidentally, when two words coincide in their development. For example, two native words can coincide in their outer aspects. For example, to bear from bearen means to carry, and bear from bearer as an animal. A native word and a borrowing can coincide in their outer aspects. For example, fair from Latin feria and fair from native fager, that means blonde. Two borrowings can coincide, for example, base from the French base, Latin basis, and base, that means low, from the Latin bass, and which means Italian basso. And homonyms can develop through shortening of different words. For example, cap from cabriolet, cabbage, cabin, and so on. As for the classification of homonyms, so homonyms are distinguished into three types. They are homonyms proper, homophones, homographs. Homonyms are the same in sound and spelling, are traditionally termed homonyms proper. For example, the word match means a game, and a thing is used for producing fire. Homonyms are the same in sound but different in spelling, can be defined as homophones. For example, a piece, piece, a cent to cent, to write, write. The examples here show that homophones maybe belong both to the same and to different categories parts of speech. And the homographs are words with the same spelling but pronounced differently. For example, bow, to incline the head of or body in salutation, and the bay, that is a flexible strip of wood for propelling arrows. And the example, to lead, that means to conduct on the way, go before to show the way, and the lead, a heavy, rather soft metal. A more detailed classification was given by Arnold. She classified only perfect homonyms and suggested four criteria of their classification. They are lexical meaning, grammatical meaning, basic forms, and paradigms. According to these criteria, Arnold pointed out the following groups: homonyms identical in their grammatical meanings, basic forms, and paradigms, that is a typical example or model of a word, and different in their lexical meanings. For example, a board in the meanings a council and a thin flat piece of wood. Homonyms identical in their grammatical meanings and basic forms, different in their lexical meanings and paradigms. For example, to lie, light, lied, and to lie, lay, lain. Homonyms different in their lexical meanings, grammatical meanings, paradigms, but coinciding in their basic forms. For example, light, lights, light, lighter, lightest. Homonyms different in their lexical meanings, grammatical meanings in their basic forms, but coinciding in one of the forms of their paradigms. For example, a bit and a bit, from to bite. So, synonyms. Synonyms are one of the language's most important expressive means. The principal function of synonyms is to represent the same phenomenon in different aspects, shades, and variations. Synonyms can be defined as words of the same category parts of speech conveying the same concept and possessing one or more identical denotational meanings, but different either in shade of meaning or in stylistic characteristics. For example, good looking, pretty, attractive adjectives describe a pleasant appearance. To win a victory, to gain a victory, homeland, motherland, and etc. All synonymic groups have a central word whose meaning is equal to the denotation common to all synonymic groups. This word is called the dominant synonym. Here are examples of the dominant synonyms with their groups: to surprise, to astonish, to amaze, to astound. And the another example is to tremble, to shiver, to shudder, to shake. The dominant synonym expresses the notion common to all synonyms of the group in the most general way without any additional information. So, any dominant synonym is a typical basic vocabulary word. Its meaning is broad and generalized, more or less covers the meanings of the rest of the synonyms. For example, to look instead of, to glare, to stare, to peer, to peep. Summing up what has been said, the following characteristic features of the dominant synonym can be underlined: high frequency of usage, broad combinability, and that is ability to be used in combinations with various classes of words, and broad general meaning. Classification of synonyms. Synonyms are words different in their outer aspects but identical or similar in their inner aspects. In English there are a lot of synonyms because there are many borrowings. For example, hearty, that is native, and cordial, that is borrowing. Town is native and city is borrowing. All synonymic groups can be classified into several types, and the classification system for synonyms was established by Vinogradov, the famous Russian scholar. In his classification system, there are three types of synonyms. They are ideographic, stylistic, and absolute. The first is ideographic, that is, words conveying the same concept but differing in shades of meaning. For example, stool, chair, piece, lump, slice. The second is stylistic, that is, different in stylistic characteristics. Stylistic synonyms are similar in denotational aspect of meaning, but different in the connotational aspect. Substituting one stylistic synonym for another result in an adequate presentation of the situation of communication. The following examples of synonyms are differentiated by stylistic connotations of attendant features. For example, snack, bite, snap all denote a frugal meal taken in a hurry. Refreshment is also a light meal. Feast is rich or abundant meal. Among stylistic synonyms, Professor Hockett points out a special group of words are called euphemisms. There are words used to substitute some unpleasant or offensive words. For example, the late instead of dead. There are also phraseological synonyms: to get into a jam, to get into hot water, to get in trouble. And phrasal verbs: to look like, to take after, to carry on, to go on, to continue. And the third is absolute. Absolute means coinciding in all their shades of meaning. For example, big, large, homeland, motherland, small, little. And in contemporary research on synonym, semantic criterion is frequently used. The leading semantic component in the semantic structure of a word is usually termed denotative components or denotation. The denotation component expresses the conceptual content of a word. It means that denotation is the central meaning of a word. The terms connotation or connotative components are used to describe more or less full picture of the meaning of a word, to give the additional semantic components. The difference in connotation may be illustrated by the word's famous meaning. For example, the adjective celebrated with positive meaning, celebrated scholar, celebrated singer, celebrated artist, and the adjective notorious with negative meaning, notorious murderer, notorious lady killer, notorious robber, and so on. Synonyms may be defined as words with the same denotation but different in connotative components. The following table of analysis of the numerous synonyms of the verb to look is suggested by Andrushina. So, denotation to look: to stare, connotation steadily, lastingly, in surprise, curiosity; to glare steadily, lastingly, in anger, rage, fury; to gaze steadily, lastingly, in tenderness, admiration, wonder; to glance briefly, in passing; to peep steadily, lastingly, through an opening or from a concealed location; to peer steadily, carefully, with difficulty or strain. The common denotation shows that, according to the semantic criterion, the words grouped in the above table are synonyms. The connotative components represented on the right side of the table highlight their differentiations. Antonyms are words belonging to the same category of parts of speech and expressing contrary or contradictory notions. Antonyms, from the Greek anti, opposite, and onoma, name, are word pairs that opposite in meaning, such as hot and cold, fat and skinny. Polysemantic words may have different antonyms depending on the meaning. For example, the adjective dull has the antonyms interesting, amusing, entertaining for its meaning of deficient in interest; clever, bright, capable for its meaning of deficient in intellect; and active for the meaning of deficient in activity, and etc. Antonyms form mostly pairs, not groups like synonyms: above, below, absent, present, alike, different, bad, good. Antonymy is not distributed among the categories of parts of speech, and the most antonyms are adjectives. They are only natural because qualitative characteristics are easily compared and contrasted. For example, high, low, old, young, wide, narrow, strong, weak, and etc. Verbal pairs of antonyms are fewer in number. Here are some of them: to lose, to find, to open, to close, to accept, to reject, and etc. Nouns are not rich in antonyms, but even so, some examples can be given: good, evil, joy, grief, love, hatred, friend, enemy, and so on. Antonymic adverbs can be subdivided into two groups. A. Adverbs derived from adjectives, for example, warmly, coldly, merrily, sadly, loudly, softly, and B. Adverbs proper, now, then, here, there, ever, never, up, down. And Komisarov, in his dictionary of antonyms, classified them into two groups: absolute or root antonyms, they're late, early, old, young, and derivational antonyms, that is, to please, to displease, expensive, inexpensive. Absolute antonyms can be subdivided into antonyms as proper, where opposition is gradual. It includes several elements characterized by different degrees of the same property. For example, cold, cool, warm, hot, large, little, or small. And the complementarity is a binary opposition. It may have only two members, the denial of one member of the opposition implies the accession of the other. And for example, dead, alive, single, married, male, female. And the converses denote one and the same referent from different points of view. For example, to sell, to buy, to give, to receive. And absolute antonyms have different roots, and the derivational antonyms have the same roots but different affixes. For example, known, unknown, appear, disappear, pre-war, post-war, and etc. The regular type of derivational antonyms contains negative prefixes, that is, im, il, in, ir, an, this, none. For example, experienced, inexperienced, logical, illogical, convenient, inconvenient, and sometimes they are formed by means of suffixes few and less. The number of antonyms with the suffixes full and less is not very large, and sometimes even if we have a word with one of these suffixes, its antonym is formed by not by substituting full by less. For example, successful, unsuccessful, selfless, selfish. The same is true about antonyms with negative prefixes. To man is not an antonym of the word to unman. To disappoint is not an antonym of the word to appoint. The difference between derivational and root antonyms is not only in their structure but in semantics as well. Derivational antonyms express contradictory notions. One of them includes the other, for example, active, inactive. Absolute antonyms express contrary notions and can be arranged in a group of more than two members. For example, the antonyms of the adjective ugly, plain, good-looking, pretty, beautiful. And Professor Lipka gives the type which he calls directional opposition, for example, up, down, and the consequence opposition, that is, learn, know, and the antipodal opposition, that is, north, south, east, west. It is based on contrary notion in opposite directions. The pairs come, go, arrive, depart, involve motion in different directions. In the case up, down, we have movement from a point, and in the case come, go, we have movement from or to the speaker. Professor Lipka also points out non-binary contrasts or many-member lexical sets. He gives serially ordered sets such as scales, hot, warm, tepid, cool, cold, and color words, black, gray, white, and the ranks, marshal, general, colonel, major, captain, and there are gradable examination marks: excellent, good, average, fair, and poor. So now consider your answers to the following questions. Which words do we call homonyms? What is the traditional classification of homonyms? What classification was given by Arnold? Say why synonyms are one of the language's most important expressive means. And what is the dominant synonym? What types of synonyms were defined in Vinogradov's classification system? And what do the terms denotation and connotation express? To which pans of speech do most antonyms belong? What classification of antonyms is given by Komisarov? What types of antonyms are defined by Lipka?